for participating in a video that advised service members against following illegal orders. Hegseth is trying to reduce Kelly's retirement rank and his military pension. Joining us, MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin. So did Senator Kelly do anything wrong here? Does he have a case?
It's not clear that Senator Kelly did anything wrong here. And in particular, Katie, one of the statutes that he cites in his lawsuit is one that he says only can be used to reduce somebody's pension if it pertains to conduct that occurred prior to their retirement. Clearly here, the fact pattern shows that the statements at issue were made by Senator Kelly well after he retired from active duty. He says what Secretary Hegseth is trying to do, therefore, is blatantly impermissible. He also says that these are constitutional violations against him for exercising his free speech rights, and that, therefore, what the Department of Defense, the Department of the Navy are doing are in retaliation for his exercising those speech rights.
So this is happening to other members of Congress as well who are in that video. Are they also planning to file suit?
Not to the best of my knowledge, but of course, as you know, 4 of them in particular have received a letter from the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, that's Jeanine Pirro, saying that she would like to meet with them and or their counsel to discuss an investigation. Therefore, not only does Mark Kelly understand that he could be penalized within the context of the military system, but you now have Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan and 4 other House members who participated in that video, therefore all 6 of them, saying that they understand that they are under either criminal investigation or danger of having their military rank reduced, their pension reduced as a result of their participation in this video, Katie.
So there's a free speech argument here, but isn't there also a speech defense for members of Congress as well? It's a speech and debate defense,
clause.
Right?
Yeah, it's a constitutional immunity, and essentially what it says is that members of Congress are immune from prosecution for things that they do in the course of their legislative duties. Now, you could have a debate about whether the creation of this duty is part and parcel of their exercising their legislative duties, and were this to ever get to a court, I suspect that that would be the most heavily litigated issue. It's not clear to me how exactly that would turn, but I think it's at least what lawyers call a very colorable defense on behalf of those 4 House members, Katie.
So what is it going to mean for any other veterans who might not agree with the administration's policies and maybe write an op-ed or come on a television show, a news show, or post a video on social media that says, I don't agree with this, I think it was an illegal order, and, you know, this is something that should be investigated. Are they going to potentially be in trouble for that sort of speech?
That's unclear, right? Because on one hand, these particular members of Congress attract attention because of their visibility. They are not ordinary former members of the service. They are all members of the existing Congress. On the other hand, is the sort of action that the administration is either threatening or already carrying out against these members certain to have a chilling effect? Absolutely. And perhaps one might argue that that is actually the intent, that they don't want to prosecute, much less convict these folks, so much as they want to send a message to former and active duty members across the country. Speak out against us and what we're doing at your peril.
Yeah, Lisa Rubin, thank you very much. And sit tight. The next hour of Katie Tour.